Welcome to a TubeDuel Original. I'm your host, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive into an absolutely fascinating piece of business history. We're looking at how a company took severe constraints, intense resource scarcity, and some seriously impossible odds and turned them into their absolute biggest superpower. We are, of course, talking about the history of Toyota. It is literally a masterclass in how limitations can actually drive world-changing innovation.
Now, I want you to pose this question to yourself. How on earth did a Japanese textile loom maker evolve into the world's largest automaker? It doesn't exactly seem like a natural leap, right? Going from building weaving equipment to total global automotive dominance. But as you'll see throughout this explainer, the fundamental DNA of their entire car empire was actually completely forged back in those early textile days.
Section 1. From Looms to Automobiles, the Inventive Spark.
If we walk through this timeline, it perfectly illustrates that crazy pivot from fabric to vehicles. In 1902, Kiichiro Toyoda invents this revolutionary auto-stopping loom for his family's business. It was such a game-changer that by 1929, he actually sold the patent rights to a British company, the Platt Brothers, for £100,000. And here's where the history really turns. Kiichiro gave that money to his son, Kiichiro, specifically to research automobiles. By 1933, Kiichiro officially starts the automotive department, but get this, they didn't reinvent the wheel right away. They literally bought a 1933 Chevy and a Ford and just reverse-engineered them. A pretty bold move for a loom company. They used those mechanics to build their A1 prototype in 1935, and just 1 year later, mass production kicks off with the Model AA.
And here it is, the 1936 Toyota AA, their very first mass-produced passenger car out on the open road. It's got this gorgeous vintage, streamlined aesthetic that was heavily inspired by the Chrysler-built DeSoto Airflow from that era. But beyond the looks, this was a massive deal for the Japanese market. It brought modern, metal body construction to everyday consumers, finally moving them away from those fragile, fabric-over-wood frames they used in the 1920s.
Section 2. The name is Toyota. A strategic shift. You might have noticed I've been saying Toyota with a D when talking about the founders, and there's a really fascinating cultural reason for that shift. In 1936, the company ran a huge public competition for a new logo, which ended up sparking a permanent name change. Why? Well, two main reasons. First, in Japanese, the D in Toyota is a voiceless consonant, which just wasn't considered very appealing. The T sound in Toyota is voiced, making it much crisper to say. But the second reason, and honestly the cooler one, is all about jikaku. That's the practice of counting brushstrokes in Japanese characters. Writing Toyota takes 10 strokes, but writing Toyota, that takes exactly 8. And in Japanese culture, the number 8 is deeply connected to wealth and good fortune. They basically engineered good luck right into their brand identity.
Section 3. The Toyota Production System. Eliminating Waste.
Picture Japan right after World War II. It was in a state of total chaos. Facing severe material scarcity, hardly any funding, and limited tech, Toyota desperately needed to catch up to America, but completely lacked America's massive resources. The result is the blueprint we're looking at right now, the Toyota Production System House. And you guys, this wasn't some academic theory cooked up in a fancy boardroom. It was born from the desperate, boots-on-the-ground reality of needing to eliminate waste just to survive. The goal, which acts as the roof of this house, is achieving the highest quality, lowest cost, and shortest lead time. And holding up that roof are two absolutely revolutionary pillars.
Let's look at that first pillar, Jidoka. This translates to automation with a human touch. Remember Kiichiro Toyoda's 1902 loom from the very beginning of the explainer, the one designed to stop automatically the second a single thread broke so it wouldn't waste material? Well, Toyota brought that exact same principle over to car manufacturing. You design your equipment to detect problems and shut down immediately. It prevents defects from traveling down the line, and crucially, it separates human work from machine work. You free up your people to actually solve problems instead of just babysitting running machines all day.
Which brings us to the second pillar, just-in-time, or JIT. Coined by Kiichiro Toyoda, JIT means producing only the necessary part at the exact necessary time and in the exact necessary quantity. It sounds simple enough, but in practice it is deeply counterintuitive. Most companies rely on huge stockpiles of inventory as a safety net. But when you strip away that safety net, you immediately expose the hidden problems, the rocks in your operational river. It literally forces your team to fix the actual issues causing delays, rather than just hiding them under a mountain of excess inventory.
Section 4. Expanding into global markets. Entering new markets.
So what happens when you take these hyper-efficient rules out into the wider world? Well, Toyota's entry into the US wasn't some magical overnight success story. In fact, back in 1958, their initial entry with the Toyopet Crown was a total flop. It just wasn't built for American highway speeds. But true to their philosophy of continuous improvement, they didn't throw in the towel. They retreated, listened to the market, and came back swinging with the Corona in '65 and the Corolla in '68. Now, Detroit's big three automakers mostly ignored these little economical cars. But then, the 1973 oil crisis hit. Almost overnight, consumer demand shifted directly to fuel efficiency, and Toyota's super reliable compacts went from a niche curiosity to an absolute necessity. Once they locked in that consumer trust, they systematically moved upmarket, eventually launching the luxury Lexus brand in 1989.
Let's just pause on this number for a second. 1404. That is the total number of Model A sedans Toyota ever produced back in their early days. It's a tiny number, but contrast that with the Corolla. Designed in the mid-60s to meet the needs of Japanese commuters, the Corolla just kept compounding in quality year after year. It eventually became the single most popular car in the entire world. Talk about leveling up.
Section 5. The Hybrid Revolution, a New Energy Era.
Entering the 21st century, Toyota faced their next massive constraint, rising environmental concerns and the need for clean energy. And the pace of this timeline is just staggering. In 1993, they launched the G21 project, aiming to boost fuel efficiency by 50%. Pretty ambitious, right? But then in 1994, an executive vice president comes in and issues a top-down order doubling that target. He demanded a 100% improvement, twice the efficiency. This constraint was so impossibly high, it forced the engineering team to just completely scrap conventional engine plans and gamble on an unproven hybrid system. By 1995, they had a concept car. By 1997, the first-generation Prius hits mass production. They took an unknown technology to the mass market in roughly 2 years. That's practically unheard of.
To truly understand how they pulled off something like the Prius, we have to look at this quote from Taiichi Ohno, the mastermind behind the Toyota production system. He said, "We don't simply fix problems. We keep asking why until we find the root cause. This is the foundation of everything." The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that Toyota's real product isn't actually cars. Their real product is a relentless, company-wide philosophy of human development and root cause problem solving.
And that leaves us with a huge question for you to take away from this explainer today. How can you apply the Toyota way to your own life or your own business? Think about the excess inventory or the waste in your daily routines. What are the broken threads in your workflows that you need to actually stop and fix at the root cause, rather than just endlessly working around them? Because when you finally embrace your constraints instead of fighting them, you just might build your own superpower. Thank you so much for joining me for this Tube Deal original explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.